Asian economy is about Singapore. I believe some of you have visited Singapore. Just to show how big is Singapore compared to size of your country, here is Singapore compared to Germany. And the same, showing you how big is Singapore compared to France, here is Singapore compared to France. How far is Singapore from where you live? It is about 1660 kilometers. Races in Singapore consisted of 74.1% Chinese, 13.4% Malay, 9.2% Indian, 3.3% others. 4 official languages are English, Mandarin, Malay and Tamil. In 1819, Sir Stamford Raffles of British India Company established his trading post on Singapore Island. Sir Stamford Raffles may have discovered the potential of Singapore as a port city, but peripheral roads, town planning, infrastructure were primarily to assist the colonial rulers and not the people. In the West, regarded as founding father of modern-day Singapore. Round the Cape. That is what opened up trade with both South and East Asia. Before then, the major routes had been overland, via the Silk Road. Many goods traveled that road, but because of the difficulties, dangers, and many middlemen, the prices of goods rose very high. They could not go by sea until they reached the Mediterranean, when the Venetians made their city rich distributing them. But once Vasco da Gama had found the way round the Cape, the European powers, British, France, Spain and the Netherlands quickly started sending increasingly large ships to trade with India, Indonesia, China and all the rest. The profits were huge, especially initially, when you could sell at prices based on the spice road costs. Of course, prices came down, but the idea was set the way to make big money was sea trade round the Cape to India, and looking after their interests in India and snapping up other countries' colonies led Britain to acquire an empire in India, all done round the Cape. And then the Europeans built Suez Canal over here. The Suez Canal is a man-made waterway connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean via the Red Sea. It enables a more direct route for shipping between Europe and Asia, effectively allowing for passage from the North Atlantic to the Indian Ocean without having to circumnavigate the African continent. The Straits of Malacca and Singapore is one of the most important shipping waterways in the world from both an economic and a strategic perspective. It is the shortest shipping channel between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, linking major economies such as Middle East, China, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong and South Korea. On the 9th of August 1965, Singapore separated from Malaysia to become an independent and sovereign state. The separation was the result of deep political and economic differences between the ruling parties of Singapore and Malaysia, which created communal tensions that resulted in racial riots in July and September 1964. Lee Kuan Yew, a founding father of modern city-state of Singapore, who transformed the tiny outpost of Singapore into one of Asia's wealthiest and least corrupt countries. When Singapore was driven out of Malaysia, he was utterly shattered. Singapore had lost its economic and historical hinterland. But he was determined to see his nation succeed and thrive despite all odds, and thrive it did. He was the first leader of a country in history who truly understood the cultures of both China and the West. He used this understanding to great effect, directed policies that led the Chinese-majority Singapore to become a multiracial and independent city-state, and later a hub of commerce in Southeast Asia. The people of Singapore profited from the relative harmony and stability. Singapore had no natural resources, rubber, oil palm, and precious mineral. British Army left Singapore in 1971, closed their army base. Malaysia was their main market. Goods manufacturers were sold to Malaysia. Malaysia imposed a tax on Singapore goods. Growing unemployment. The Cultural Revolution was mostly about reinforcing the revolutionary fervor of communism in China from 1966 to 1976. So it included destroying anything considered capitalistic and not really in line with the communist path that China ought to follow. The fear of Chinese Cultural Revolution and communism spread to neighboring countries such as Hong Kong and Taiwan. Singapore offered themselves to Western countries as an alternative place for Western companies to open their factory plant in Asia. At that time the reason was, geographically Singapore is quite far from mainland China. So some of the aid was then switched to Singapore. Late 1960s, Western companies set up assembly line. 1970s, started to produce circuit boards and silicon chips. 1980s, Singapore became the leading producer of consumer electronics in Asia. Foreign companies were lured by the cheap wages, low taxes, and well-trained workforces. No strike law, 1968. Education focused on engineering, technical and science. Integrated circuit count for $43.8 billion, where 42% is exported to Hong Kong and 17% to China. Mostly to Asian countries. Outside Asia are Germany and United States, where Germany with 2.3% in total and USA is 1.9%. Packaged medicament count for $4.39 billion, where the biggest buyer is the Netherlands and Japan and United States. Semiconductor count for $4.53 billion, where Hong Kong and Malaysia are two biggest importer for this product, count for 33% and 18% respectively. $37.7 billion of petroleum are sold to Indonesia and Malaysia, two biggest importer for this product, where Australia is the third country to import refined petroleum from Singapore. Oxygen amino compound count for $6.66 billion. Belgium and Germany are the two biggest importer for this product. established state-owned company, created a team of gifted civil servants, given the crash course in business skills, in charge for the company which set up by the government. Singapore Airlines. Being the flagship carrier for Singapore, a city-state so small in population there can be no reliance for the domestic market to drive demand. It carved itself a niche market that became a force de facto. For 22 years, Singapore Airlines has been named the best international airline in the world by Travel Plus Leisure's World's Best Awards. Singapore has the best airport in the world, too. PSA International Private Limited is one of the world's largest port operators. 91,000 containers day, 60 ships day. 2014, 33.5 million containers were handled. 5 million container ended in Singapore. 2015, 3.5 billion net profit for PSA. Of the 87 million barrels of oil produced per day in 2011, approximately 15.2 million passed through the Strait of Malacca, the shortest sea route between African and Persian Gulf suppliers and Asian markets. The world's second busiest waterway, it has been in continuous use since antiquity, with Roman, Greek, Chinese and Indian traders. Currency, Singapore dollar. 1 euro equals 1.5 Singaporean dollars. GDP per capita, 55,182.48 dollars. France, 42430.30. Germany, 46,268.64. Gross domestic product, 297.9 billion US dollars. France, 2.8 trillion US dollars. Germany, 3.73 trillion US dollars. GDP per capita equals total GDP total population. Singapore population, 5.3 million. Singapore GDP per capita. 1970, $925. France was $2,860. Germany was $2,700. 1980, $4,930. France was $12,710. Germany was $12,090. 1990, $11,860. France was $21,800. Germany was $22,220. 2000, $23,792. France was $22,466. Germany was $23,718. 2010, $46,569. France was $40,705. Germany was $41,788. Singapore's oil and gas are mainly supplied by Indonesia. Indonesia has long been the world's #3 exporter of liquefied natural gas, are to Qatar and Malaysia. Singapore's water are mainly supplied by Malaysia.